Imagine walking along a deserted beach, the kind of place where the ocean whispers secrets to the shore. That's exactly where Logan was, a young man in his early 20s after a storm had churned the sea into a frenzy. The air was thick with salt, the sky a brooding canvas of bruised purples and grays. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just the quiet solace the vastness offered, when his eyes snagged on something truly extraordinary. Half buried in the wet sand, near the high tide line, was a rock unlike any he had ever seen. It was perfectly spherical, about the size of a grapefruit, and an impossible obsidian black. But what truly set it apart was the faint, almost imperceptible hum it emitted, and a warmth that radiated from its smooth surface even on that chilly afternoon. Logan, with a mix of trepidation and fascination, picked it up. It felt ancient, heavy, and strangely alive in his hands. He knew instinctively that this was no ordinary stone. He took it home, a silent, enigmatic passenger in his backpack. For years, that rock became Logan's most treasured and most perplexing possession. It sat on his mantelpiece, a dark, silent sentinel in his otherwise ordinary life. Friends would visit, glance at it, and offer theories. "It's a meteorite," Madison would exclaim, always the enthusiast. Or just a really smooth river rock, Mateo, ever the pragmatist, would counter with a shrug. But Logan knew better. He often found himself just staring at it, tracing the invisible lines of its perfect sphere, wondering about its origins, its purpose. He never let anyone else touch it, not really. It was his secret keeper, his silent companion. Life moved on. Logan married, had a beautiful daughter named Emma. As Emma grew, the rock became a fixture in her childhood, a source of endless wonder and imaginative stories. "Daddy, do you think there's a tiny dragon sleeping inside?" she'd ask, her small fingers pointing at the dark sphere, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Or maybe a lost star?" Logan would smile, his own wonder rekindled by her innocent questions. He'd tell her stories of ancient oceans and cosmic journeys, weaving tales around the silent object, never guessing how close to the truth some of those stories might be. Decades passed. The rock remained unchanged, a constant in a world of flux. Logan's hair began to silver at the temples. Emma grew into a bright, inquisitive young woman. They had, both, in their own ways, almost forgotten the initial mystery, accepting the rock as an immutable part of their home. Until one crisp autumn evening. The house was quiet, the only sound the gentle crackle of logs in the fireplace. Logan was reading in his favorite armchair, Emma engrossed in her studies at the kitchen table. Suddenly, a subtle tremor. Not an earthquake, but something emanating from within the house, a low, resonant vibration. Logan looked up, a prickle of unease running down his spine. His gaze fell to the mantelpiece. The rock. It was glowing, not brightly, not blindingly, but with a soft, internal luminescence, a deep, pulsating blue that seemed to breathe with a slow, rhythmic beat. Emma, startled by the strange light, rushed into the living room, her eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and awe, fixed on the object. "Dad, what's happening?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Logan, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, could only shake his head. He approached the mantelpiece, his hands trembling slightly as he reached out, not to touch, but to simply be closer. The warmth he remembered from that distant day on the beach was back, stronger now, almost radiating heat. As they watched, utterly mesmerized, a hairline fracture appeared on the rock's perfectly smooth surface. It was so fine at first, almost invisible, but then, with an agonizingly slow delineation, it began to widen. A faint, high-pitched hum filled the air, growing louder, more insistent. The blue glow intensified, bathing the room in an ethereal light. The crack snaked across the surface, branching, deepening, until a distinct line divided the sphere into two unequal halves. And then, with a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, the rock began to open. Slowly, majestically, The two halves parted, revealing not solid stone, not crystal formations, but something utterly, impossibly alien. Inside, suspended in a clear, viscous liquid, was a miniature, perfectly preserved ecosystem. Tiny, bioluminescent organisms, unlike anything known to science, pulsed with a soft, internal light, moving with graceful, unhurried motions. It was a kaleidoscope of impossible colors, electric blues, deep purples, shimmering greens, all contained in this impossibly ancient vessel. Logan and Emma stared, breathless, their minds struggling to comprehend the impossible beauty before them. It was a universe in miniature, a vibrant, self-sustaining world hidden for millennia. The sheer unlikeliness of it all was overwhelming. This wasn't a geode or a fossil. This was life, utterly unique, utterly unknown. Days turned into weeks, and the initial shock gave way to a desperate need for answers. Logan, with Emma's urging, contacted Matteo, now a renowned astrobiologist at a prestigious university. Matteo, initially skeptical, dismissed it as a clever hoax or an elaborate art piece. But Logan's earnestness and a grainy photo Emma had managed to snap convinced him to make the long journey. When Matteo finally stood before the opened rock, his usual scientific composure shattered. His eyes, accustomed to seeking logic and explanation, widened in disbelief. He ran tests, brought in specialized equipment, his initial skepticism replaced by a profound, almost reverent awe. The rock itself was composed of elements not found on Earth, or at least not in that precise isotopic signature. And the organisms within? They possessed a genetic structure so foreign, so complex, it defied all known biological classifications. It was, Matteo concluded, an extraterrestrial ecosystem, perfectly preserved, perhaps for billions of years, a silent voyager through the cosmos, landing by chance on a small blue planet. The news, as it always does, eventually leaked. What began as a local curiosity exploded into a global phenomenon. Scientists, philosophers, and curious minds from every corner of the world descended on Logan's quiet home. The discovery challenged everything humanity thought it knew about life, about the universe, about its own place within it. Logan, the unassuming man who had simply picked up an odd rock on a beach, became an accidental guardian of a universal secret, a living testament to the wonders that lie hidden, waiting to be discovered. Years later, Logan, now an old man, would often sit in the quiet solitude of his study, the glowing, otherworldly artifact carefully preserved in a specially designed containment unit. Emma, who was now a scientist herself, often visited, sharing new theories, new insights into the miniature world her father had found. He would simply gaze at it, a gentle smile on his face, remembering that stormy beach, the feel of the warm, humming rock in his hand. It had been a silent promise, a secret kept for decades, and its eventual revelation had not only changed his life, but the very fabric of human understanding. The universe he knew was far stranger and far more beautiful than anyone had ever dared to imagine. And sometimes, its greatest secrets are found in the most unexpected places, waiting patiently to crack open.